Beatrice Herrera. Chapter 1. Beatrice was kicked out of the University of Miami in the middle of her second semester. It was November 12th, 2 days after her 19th birthday. She'd been looking forward to Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the New Year holidays, the recent passage of Halloween and her birthday providing, as usual, a pleasant slipstream of convivial energy which history had shown would sweep her up in a whirlwind of positive, concurrent brain chemicals and activities. Surplus serotonin, kill or be killed Miami Christmas shopping, and holiday event planning. The termination of her matriculation at the University of Miami had really, in her words, quote, shit the bed, end of quote, on the possibility of her usual Yuletide crescendo. She had 24 hours to clear out of her dorm. She was, now, sitting in a campus shuttle bus, headed to her dorm. The 6 large 4-by-4-foot side windows of the shuttle bus had a tiny 3-inch jalousie at each of their tops, which could be opened to let in air. The 6 of them had been cracked open to let in the 72-degree Miami winter breeze. It washed over the 12 bodies in the vessel. The shuttle bus driver still had her small personal fan perched on the sill of her left side window, running at full pelt. Beatrice sat in the seat immediately behind the driver. She stared at the whirring center of the fan, experiencing a calming hypnosis while contemplating her future. One thing was certain, quote, no way I'm moving back in with my parents. I'd rather live in a convent, end of quote. And that turned out to be a most prophetic statement. Chapter 2. Beatrice had been studying journalism and creative writing. She really only wanted to study creative writing, but since her parents had to supply most of the cash for her college education, she couldn't approach them with a straight face and say, I'm going to pursue a degree in creative writing. Although in 12th grade, she had won a short story contest in Teen Latina magazine, for which she had been awarded $1,500. Her parents still thought of that as a cute schoolgirl fluke, and her parents certainly couldn't regard the telling of tales and stories as a life path. Her father was an upholsterer by trade and had come to Miami from Cuba in 1978 when he was 8 years old. Her mother came from Cuba to Miami when she was 14. One of her mother's uncles owned a farm with chickens and cows and a nursery of trees and plants, and he paid dearly and made painstaking arrangements for Beatrice's mother to arrive by rogue plane at Tamiami Airport, which was a tiny private airport because planes from Cuba were not legal in the United States, and so had to land at little private airports, where a large manila folder of cash had arrived first. That was in 1981. Her father's name was Juan. Her mother's Nira. Her mother did manicures and pedicures out of their home, Beatrice's home growing up. The house was a very modest 2-bedroom house in a suburb. The house was a very modest 2-bedroom house in a suburb of Miami named Kendall. Her mother also sold blouses and shirts out of their home. The living room had 2 15-foot-long racks with clothing on hangers. Where the blouses and shirts came from was never divulged to Beatrice. Her parents were as open to supplying $20,000 a year so that Beatrice could study iambic pentameter and foregrounding as they were to dousing their home with gasoline and striking a match. Her father hadn't read anything other than junk mail, bills, and receipts since 1985. In 1980, he had read the naturalization oath of allegiance at the Freedom Tower in downtown Miami. That was the most poetic, profound reading he had ever done. Neither Juan nor Nira had ever deliberately set foot in a library. Neither of them spoke English beyond a 6th grade level. Beatrice, on the other hand, had tested in the 98th percentile of English comprehension and usage, and possessed the precise diction of an American news anchorwoman, burnished to a formidable vulnerability with a hearty, dark alto voice, with just a lemon's twist of raspiness, a feature that was added to her vocal package around the age of 18, once she had been a cigarette smoker for 4 years, and had provoked the rasp by challenging herself and her smoker friends to do things like take a large drag and then recite the alphabet while exhaling the smoke. As Beatrice arrived at the bus bench in front of her dorm building's parking lot, the bench under an iron awning, both painted dark green, and with an advertisement for Badia brand spices and marinades placed behind a plastic cover, 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and with the words, "Biz bangin'," written from south to north in orange spray paint over its entirety. She recalled her first week here. The first night, she had gotten so drunk on Jägermeister she had, while attempting to get into the bath, fallen and hit the soap dish to the left of the bathtub so hard with her elbow that it came off, along with a 2-by-2 foot expanse of bathroom wall tile. Now, Beatrice was walking toward the front doors of the dorm through the parking lot, and she remembered her first Friday night here. She had graduated to Jägermeister and hash. A boy she had befriended was driving her back to the dorm from a freshman pep rally. And after taking a puff off a small pipe, she saw her dorm building looming in front of her through the windshield of this boy's 2017 Lexus SUV. The dorm building looked like an insurmountable reality. It looked serious. The huge dorm building looked nothing like childhood, nothing like middle school, nothing like high school, nothing like summer vacation. It looked serious. And as the boy's Lexus pulled into a visitor parking space at the furthermost outline of the dorm's parking lot, Beatrice admitted to him that she was so high she could not feel her legs. And fully she expected to not be able to get out of the car, much less to walk the 30 yards to the elevator and ride it to her 4th floor room. Beatrice, back in the present, reached the elevator and pushed the small button. The door opened immediately. 2 guys with baseball caps hustled over to catch the elevator as the doors were closing. Beatrice didn't even notice. Beatrice was in her memory, being lifted under her armpits by the dual efforts of Stacy, who was her roommate at the time, on her left side, and Billy, the boy with the hash, on her right side. Same elevator, just 6 months ago. Beatrice remembered and yet didn't remember. She had been told this story by Billy, and Stacy had corroborated it, so it became a memory, an objective memory. The reverie ended abruptly when Beatrice penetrated her dorm room's second lock with her key and turned it clockwise. Her dorm mate and an unknown male were vigorously fucking, canine fashion, both of them completely nude save the boy's feet and lower legs being encased in white soccer socks, replete with a random peppering of grass stains. They were in the center of an 8-foot-long oval red and white checkered rug in the center of the living room, the boy tugging on her dorm mate's pitch black pigtails like a set of flaccid handlebars. Beatrice walked toward them with unseeing eyes, but with her eyes seeming to be concentrating on a spot just behind them on the rug. When Beatrice arrived at that spot, she reached down and yanked the rug a couple of feet backward, causing the copulating boy and girl to collapse forward in a 2-person pileup. "Wah!" Yvette exclaimed. You'll recall her dorm mate's name was Stacy, but Stacy was gone. 3 weeks was all Stacy could take of this bathroom-destroying, Jägermeister-induced invalid. By the third week, Stacy had watched Beatrice, once again in an inebriated state, while Stacy had a study buddy over no less, walk in the front door, hang her key on the hook by the door, throw her purse onto the kitchen table, the contents of the purse spilling forth and including but not limited to a tiny snack-sized Ziploc bag half full of small mushrooms, and an open beer bottle, still partially full, which splashed and then rolled off the table, careening noisily off the kitchen baseboard, settling while still spinning dervishly at the foot of the coffee table where Stacy and her study buddy were working on their homework. Beatrice then lifted her skirt, pulled down her panties, turned her back to the kitchen sink, and lofted herself up onto it. She then settled in, placing her right elbow in the firm yet soft, milk-white flesh of her right thigh. Stacy and her friend watched with mouths ajar as Beatrice, oblivious to their presence, sighed audibly as a powerful stream of urine was excreted down the kitchen sink drain. Chapter 3. Beatrice quietly rolled up the rug and leaned it against the wall by the front door. Yvette shouted, but with the tiniest reserve, as if she knew Beatrice was the alpha male, "Bea, didn't you see the roll of toilet paper?" This was a reference to a symbolic language these elegant ladies had devised. If they were engaged in any genre of sexual act, they would put a roll of toilet paper behind the blinds of the front window, visible from the outside as the other approached, to let the other know. Beatrice went to the kitchen and put her back to the kitchen counter. She again lofted herself up, but this time onto the countertop, next to a weathered white plastic cutting board with two small, brown, outer onion leaves on it, an onion which had been sliced to add flavor to a Cuban sandwich bought pre-made, and next to the cutting board, a shot glass with the dried remnants of mustard in it, the mustard in the shot glass having been used to dip the sandwich for more intense flavor. For a moment, Beatrice played one of her most common mnemonic games with the onion leaves and the mustard shot glass, a game she called, quote, "How long has that been there?" End of quote. The question remained unanswered.